Betrayed by my own sister over money, I turned the tables, and what happened next destroyed everything she thought she had won. The moment I found out my sister had stolen my inheritance, I realized it wasn't just money she'd taken. She'd stolen my trust, and now she was going to pay for it. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you least expect? Join me to find out exactly how I turned the table on my cunning sister. I could feel the weight of the letter in my hands long before I opened it. The envelope was thick, official-looking, and my heart sank as I recognized the law firm's logo. I had been expecting it, of course. My mother's sudden death had left us all shaken, and there were inevitable legal matters that would follow. But what I wasn't prepared for was what that letter held inside, what I would learn about my sister, Sarah, and the despicable lengths she had gone to while I was busy mourning. The first few words blurred before my eyes as I skimmed the document, but then the phrase "primary heir" caught my attention. My breath hitched. My hands shook. I read the words again, just to make sure I wasn't imagining them. The inheritance, my inheritance, wasn't being split, as I had always expected. It was going to Sarah. I stumbled back, leaning against the kitchen counter as my head spun. How could this be? How could Sarah, my own sister, manipulate the family will so coldly, so effortlessly? She had cut me out completely, leaving me with nothing. And it wasn't just money that had been stolen from me. It was my place in our family, my legacy, my life as I had known it. I had trusted Sarah. She was the one person I had leaned on during the hard times. She had been my confidant, my partner in everything. But now, it seemed, I had been nothing but a pawn in her game. The betrayal hit harder than anything I could have imagined, and I was left standing there, completely undone. I sat down at the kitchen table, trying to process what I had just read, but the more I thought about it, the worse it got. My mind raced back to the days before our mother's death, to the time when Sarah had pretended to be the doting daughter. She had gone on and on about how much she cared for Mom, how she would be there every step of the way, making sure everything was perfect. The truth was, she had been manipulating me all along, pretending to care while secretly plotting my downfall. She had been so convincing, so genuine in her concern for our mother's health. But all along, she had been planning to rob me of everything our parents had worked for. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, my hands clutching the letter so tightly it was beginning to crumple. The pain of the betrayal was so intense I could barely breathe. This wasn't just about the money. It wasn't even about the inheritance. It was about a sister, someone I loved and trusted, betraying me for nothing more than greed. But I couldn't stay in that dark place. I couldn't just lie down and let Sarah get away with this. I wasn't going to be a passive victim, especially not when it came to something that was rightfully mine. As the anger surged within me, my mind started to work through the emotions. It wasn't just about recovering what was taken from me, it was about taking control of my life again. If Sarah thought she could steal my inheritance and destroy everything I held dear, then she was sorely mistaken. I stood up, the letter still clenched in my hand, and without thinking, I marched straight to Sarah's apartment. I had to confront her. I had to hear it from her own mouth. The drive there was a blur. My mind raced as I thought about what I was going to say. Part of me wanted to scream, to shout at her and demand answers. Another part of me wanted to break down and cry, to ask how she could do this to me. But I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. When I arrived, I didn't bother with pleasantries. I didn't even knock. I just opened the door and stormed in. Sarah looked up from the couch, surprised to see me standing there. "Jessica?" she asked, feigning innocence. "What are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" I repeated, my voice rising with frustration. "You think you can just do this behind my back? You think you can steal from me?" Her eyes flashed with something I couldn't quite place. A smirk? Disdain? Either way, it made my blood boil. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "What? Are you mad because you didn't get the inheritance? You should have known better." I felt my heart drop, but I wasn't about to let her see how much she'd hurt me. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The will, Sarah. You had the lawyer change it. You made sure I got nothing. Nothing. She laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound that sent a chill through me. You're being dramatic. You weren't even around. Mom needed me. She didn't need you. That was the moment it hit me. She hadn't just stolen my inheritance. She had dehumanized me. She had twisted everything into her favor, and now she was trying to turn the blame on me. The only time I wasn't around during Mum's illness was when I was out to source for more funds and research treatment options for Mum while she did nothing in that regard. You think this is your victory? I asked, my voice cold. You think that you're going to get away with this? You've destroyed our family, and for what? Money? Power? Sarah's expression faltered for just a second, but she quickly regained her composure. You were never the one Mom trusted the most. I was always the better daughter, Jessica. You're just upset that you couldn't control things the way you wanted to. Well, now it's mine, and there's nothing you can do about it. Something snapped inside me, but I wasn't going to lose control. Not now. Not when I was just getting started. I straightened up, taking a deep breath. I'm not going to let you get away with this, Sarah. You've made your move, but now it's my turn. I turned on my heel and left her apartment, every part of me burning with a quiet rage. She had taken everything from me, but I would get it back, and I would make her regret ever thinking she could outsmart me. The next steps would require strategy, but I was ready. She might have thought she had won, but her mistake would cost her everything. This wasn't over, not at all. The sting of betrayal was still fresh, but as I sat in my car outside my sister's apartment, my mind was beginning to clear. I wasn't going to let Sarah's actions destroy me, not in the way she thought. The shock of her betrayal had shattered me momentarily, but now that I had the clarity, I saw something else. An opportunity. This wasn't just about getting back at her or claiming what was mine. It was about taking control of my own future, on my terms. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, the leather beneath my fingers providing the only source of comfort in an otherwise turbulent moment. I had to be smart. I had to play the game, but I couldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. If I wanted to win, if I wanted to take back what was rightfully mine, I needed a strategy. One that would leave Sarah with nothing but the mess she had made. The first thing I needed was leverage. I needed a lawyer, someone who could not only fight the legal battle but also understand the intricacies of what Sarah had done to manipulate the will. After all, this wasn't just about the money. This was about exposing Sarah for who she truly was, greedy, deceitful, and willing to destroy her own sister for her gain. It's scary how the altered will seems perfect. She must have really been planning this for long. I pulled up the contacts on my phone and dialed the number of a top-tier lawyer I knew from my previous business dealings. Laura Matthews was known for handling high-profile family disputes, and if anyone could tear apart Sarah's manipulation of our mother's will, it was her. Laura Matthews, how can I help? The cool tone of her voice was the exact professionalism I needed right now. Laura, it's Jessica Green. I need your help with something. Urgent. We talked for over an hour, outlining the details of my mother's will and Sarah's actions. Laura listened intently, asking all the right questions, her experience shining through in every response. By the end of the call, I had a plan in place. It wasn't going to be easy, but I had a team now, and together, we could take Sarah down. The first step, challenging the will in court. But I couldn't stop there. If I wanted to reclaim control, I had to play this smart. Sarah had a web of lies and manipulation to untangle, and I needed to get ahead of her. I couldn't afford to wait for a legal decision. I needed to take action in the meantime. I started by looking into Sarah's financial dealings, trying to find any evidence of her shady practices. I remembered an old business deal she had worked on with one of our family's longtime partners, a man named Thomas Hayes. He'd always had a soft spot for Sarah, and I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to that relationship than I'd ever known. The way Sarah had always seemed to get everything she wanted, all while pretending to be the dutiful daughter. I wasn't just going to sit back and let her manipulate everyone. I reached out to Thomas, and within a week, I had a meeting scheduled with him. He was a hard man to get a hold of. But I'd always known the right people to call. When we met, I was careful to keep my cards close to my chest. I needed information, anything that could connect Sarah to financial misdeeds that could damage her case. Thomas was old school, and he hadn't forgotten the Green family legacy. But there was something in his eyes when I mentioned Sarah's recent dealings that gave me pause. He wasn't the friendly, open man I remembered. Instead, he seemed defensive, almost nervous. Something didn't sit right with me, and I made a mental note to dig deeper. "Sarah's always been ambitious, hasn't she?" I said, my tone casual but probing. He stiffened. "I suppose you could say that, but I don't know if I'd call it ambition. More like drive, determination." He trailed off, not meeting my eyes. I pressed him further, but he deflected. It wasn't long before I realized I wasn't going to get anything more from him right now. I left the meeting, but the feeling of unease stayed with me. I was missing something, but I didn't know what yet. As I sat in my car after the meeting, I ran through everything in my head. If I was going to take down Sarah, I needed more than just legal action. I needed to understand every corner of her empire. I couldn't just reclaim what was mine. I had to do it in a way that would ensure Sarah would never have the chance to pull something like this again. The more I thought about it, the more it became clear. The family business had always been at the heart of everything. Sarah's manipulation of the will wasn't just about the money, it was about power. She wanted control, and she knew how to use that control to her advantage. If I was going to defeat her, I had to play in her arena, and that meant stepping into the family business. I had always kept a distance, never wanting to get involved in the politics of it all, but I couldn't afford to sit on the sidelines anymore. I reached out to a few old colleagues, well-meaning people who I had once worked with in business. They knew my capabilities. They respected me. Slowly but surely, I started aligning myself with people who would support my cause. Business moguls, legal experts, and influential women who had fought their own battles. They rallied behind me, offering advice, connections, and resources. As much as I don't like putting my family problems out there, I don't have much of a choice at this very moment. The more people I gathered around me, the stronger I became. But I knew this was just the beginning. I wasn't only after the inheritance. I wasn't only after the business. I was after something much bigger, the chance to build something of my own, to take everything Sarah had tried to steal from me and use it to create a future where I called the shots. The fight ahead would be long and brutal, but I was ready. I was no longer the victim in this story. I had a plan, and I was going to take back everything Sarah thought she could steal. The weight of the legal proceedings hung over me like a dark cloud, but it was also the first moment in weeks where I felt like I had regained some control. The betrayal by Sarah was more than just a familial wound. It was a calculated attack on my life, my future, and my legacy. I wasn't going to let her win. This wasn't just about a fortune. It was about something deeper. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine. The moment I made the decision to fight back, I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed the best of the best, a lawyer with experience in high-stakes family battles, a team that understood the nuances of inheritance law, manipulation, and deception. I didn't care about the cost. I needed to win. And having Laura Matthews, a formidable attorney with a reputation for breaking down the walls of even the most powerful families. After that initial meeting, I knew she was the one I needed by my side. She was sharp, thorough, and relentless. She quickly began assembling a team of legal experts, investigators, and forensic accountants, people who could help uncover the truth and dismantle Sarah's entire scheme. As the weeks passed and the legal process unfolded, I began to uncover things I hadn't expected. The will that had been presented to me by Sarah was nothing like the one my mother had originally drafted. My mother had been clear in her wishes. She wanted me to inherit a substantial portion of the estate, a reflection of my hard work and contribution to the family business over the years. But Sarah had taken it upon herself to alter those terms, making herself the primary beneficiary. It was obvious this wasn't an accidental oversight. This was a deliberate act of manipulation. The more we dug, the more disturbing things became. Sarah hadn't just altered the will. She had used deceitful tactics to push me out of the family business entirely. She had bribed key stakeholders, manipulated documents, and even used intimidation to control the people around her. It wasn't just about the inheritance, it was about power. She wanted everything, and she was willing to destroy me to get it. So sad to discover someone I called my blood sister is power-hungry. But what Sarah hadn't counted on was that I wasn't the same woman I had been when I first learned of her betrayal. I was stronger now, more determined, and I had a plan. Every piece of evidence we uncovered became a brick in the wall that was going to bring her down. The court hearings were long and exhausting. Every day felt like a battle, but I was gaining momentum. I had never imagined myself in a courtroom, fighting for my inheritance, but I wasn't backing down now. I was in the fight of my life, and I was ready to show the world who Sarah truly was. Then came the moment that would turn the tide, the day I stepped up to the stand. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as I stood before the judge, facing Sarah and her legal team. My heart raced, but my mind was clear. This wasn't just about me. This was about exposing the lies, the manipulation, and the greed that had poisoned my sister's soul. "I have nothing against my sister, Your Honor," I began, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "But what I stand here to say today is this. Sarah has betrayed not just me, but our entire family. She used my mother's death as an opportunity to rob me of what was rightfully mine, and I'm here to reclaim it." The words hung in the air, heavy with truth. As I spoke, I could feel Sarah's glare burning into me. She was trying to maintain her composure, but I could see the cracks beginning to show. This wasn't the calm, collected woman she'd tried so hard to portray. This was a woman who had been caught in the act, and her mask was slipping. "Sarah didn't just alter the will," I continued. "She manipulated, she lied, and she used every underhanded tactic at her disposal to make sure I didn't get a penny of our family's fortune. And she thought no one would ever find out. But I found out, I found the evidence, and I'm not going to let her get away with it." As I spoke, I could feel the power shift in the room. The courtroom was no longer just a place of legal proceedings. It had become a battlefield, and I was winning. Sarah tried to interject, to laugh it off, to make me look like the villain in this story, but I had the evidence now. Every lie, every manipulation was laid bare for everyone to see. The turning point came when Sarah's own lawyer, a man who had initially sided with her, stood up and turned on her. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated justice. He spoke out about the tactics Sarah had used to control the situation, and the lies she had fed him to get him to play along. "I can no longer represent someone who has acted in such a deceptive manner," he said, his voice filled with regret. "This comes as a surprise to everyone. A lawyer really doing this? They are meant to stand by their client, no matter what. But this particular lawyer has a history with inheritance theft, he has been a victim in the past, and that was one of his biggest motivations to join law. Sarah really picked the wrong candidate to represent her, and this was my turning point." The room went quiet. The lawyer's words had the same impact as a bomb dropping in the courtroom. Sarah's smug expression faltered, and for the first time, I saw her vulnerability. She had underestimated me. She had thought she could control everything, but I was in control now. I could see the realization wash over her. The walls she had built around her empire of lies were crumbling, and I was the one with the power to tear them down. The judge adjourned the session, but I knew the tide had turned. The case wasn't over yet, but the outcome was already starting to feel inevitable. With each piece of evidence we presented, Sarah's hold on the family fortune grew weaker. Her greed had blinded her to the consequences of her actions, and now she was paying the price. As I walked out of the courtroom that day, I felt a sense of satisfaction. This wasn't just about winning. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming my life, my future, and the legacy that Sarah had tried to steal from me. The victory in the courtroom had tasted sweet, but it was just the beginning. The true test was what came next, taking back what was mine, reclaiming the family legacy that had been stolen, and showing Sarah that she wasn't the only one who could control the destiny of this empire. I wasn't about to let the success of the legal battle be the peak of my journey. That was the starting line, and now it was time to run the race. The family business had always been my rightful place, my inheritance, my legacy. But Sarah's deceit and manipulation had stolen it from me, turning me from the rightful heir into a sidelined figure in my own family. She thought she had won, but I was about to prove how wrong she was. I spent the days after the verdict in a haze of paperwork and meetings, preparing to take action. My legal team was still working on the finer details, but I knew what needed to be done. The family business was at the center of it all. The fortune my parents had built, the company they had established from the ground up, it all belonged to me now, and I wasn't going to let Sarah continue to profit from my inheritance. The first thing I did was gather the intelligence I had so carefully accumulated during the legal proceedings. I had learned about every financial transaction Sarah had been involved in, every move she'd made to isolate me, every asset she'd siphoned off for herself. I had the leverage now, and it was time to use it. One by one, I started contacting key people in the company, managers, financial officers, anyone who could help me in my quest. It wasn't about being vindictive, it was about rebuilding the trust that had been shattered by Sarah's manipulation. I wasn't just taking control, I was showing the company and everyone involved that I was more than capable of leading. The work Sarah had done, the deceit she had weaved, was nothing but a distraction. I had been in the background for too long. It was time to take center stage. I started making bold moves. First, I reorganized assets. The company's property portfolio had been mismanaged under Sarah's reign, with several key holdings being underused or poorly maintained. I immediately redirected funds, pouring money into revitalizing underperforming areas and securing profitable ventures that had been ignored. It was a strategic play to reassert my authority, but it also sent a message. Sarah's grasp on the business was slipping, and I was reclaiming what had always been mine. But the real turning point came in the boardroom. The atmosphere was tense as the company's senior leadership gathered for an emergency meeting. I had called it, and everyone knew it was a power play. The boardroom was a battleground, with Sarah and her allies sitting across from me. She was trying to hold on, but it was clear her hold on the company was loosening by the minute. She should have just enjoyed her own half, but with her stunt to manipulate everything, then she deserves nothing too. "Jessica, you've made your point," Sarah said, her voice dripping with false calm as she attempted to regain control. "But this company needs stability, and you've been absent for far too long. You can't just walk in here and expect to—" I cut her off. "No, Sarah, you've had control, and look where it's gotten us. I've spent the last few months cleaning up the mess you've made while you were out playing games. It's time to fix what you broke." Her face twisted with anger, but I could see the panic behind her eyes. The realization was sinking in that her time was up. I was taking back what was rightfully mine, and she knew there was nothing she could do to stop me. I looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the other board members. Some were loyal to Sarah, but I had a plan to turn them, and I had already won over enough of them to make my case undeniable. I didn't need Sarah's approval anymore. I had the support of the people who mattered, the people who would help me rebuild this empire. I have the legal right to take control of this company, as you all know, I continued, my voice steady and firm. And I'm doing exactly that. The first thing I'm going to do is reorganize the leadership. Sarah, you're no longer CEO. You'll be stepping down, effective immediately. A collective gasp echoed around the room. Sarah's face turned pale, her grip on the table tightening as she tried to steady herself. "You can't do this," she hissed, her mask of composure cracking. "This is my company. You're making a huge mistake." "No," I replied, standing taller as I felt the weight of the moment. "This is our company that you try to make yours, and now I'm claiming it all back. And I'm making it better. I'm putting the right people in the right places, starting with me." The board members shifted in their seats, their loyalties torn. But I had played my hand. I'd backed Sarah into a corner. The truth was clear now, and no amount of manipulation or deceit could change that. She had no choice but to step down. The company was mine again, and I was ready to lead it into a new era. There was no more room for games, no more pretending. I had played the long game, waiting for the right moment, and now that moment had arrived. As Sarah reluctantly stood up, the room fell silent. Her supporters, the few left, glanced at each other, unsure of how to proceed. But there was no going back now. I turned to face the rest of the board. "This company is going to thrive under new leadership," I said, my voice unwavering. "I'm ready to lead it, and I'm ready to make it everything it was meant to be." The tension in the room was palpable, but as I stood there, asserting my dominance, a deep sense of empowerment washed over me. The fight wasn't over, but this was the first battle I had won. I had taken back my family's legacy, and I was going to ensure that it was built stronger than ever. The feeling was soothing, standing in the same grand office, the one I had walked into years ago, full of hope and excitement, only to have it all shattered by betrayal. But now it was different. The office wasn't just a place where business happened anymore. It was my empire, my future. I had built it, reclaimed it, and now it was mine to lead. As I walked through the halls, everything felt so much clearer. My step was steady, my gaze unwavering. The weight of everything I had fought for, every setback, every betrayal, every moment of doubt, was now behind me. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about power, legacy, and the simple fact that I had turned the tables on the very person who thought they could break me. Sarah, once so confident, so sure of her position, had now been exposed for who she truly was, a fraud. The world knew the truth now, and her reign had come to a crashing halt. The way she had manipulated our family, using my own mother's vulnerability to get what she wanted, it was all out in the open. There were no more secrets. The inheritance was mine, the family business was mine, and Sarah, well, she had nothing left. She had lost everything. It wasn't just the inheritance that mattered. It was the company. It was the blood, sweat, and tears that had gone into building the empire my parents had started. My parents' legacy, which she tried to steal, was now something I would protect, grow, and make even stronger. Sarah had underestimated me, and it cost her everything. I had once felt the sting of betrayal, felt like my life was crumbling under the weight of my sister's greed and manipulation. But now, standing tall as the new head of the family business, I realized something crucial. The pain had made me stronger. The anger had fueled my strategy. The betrayal had birthed the woman standing before this empire today. I wasn't just the woman who had reclaimed what was rightfully mine. I was a force, an unstoppable force. I had turned the tide, and in doing so, I had taken back control of my life, my destiny. This wasn't about getting back at Sarah anymore. It was about embracing my own strength and power. The board members who once cowered before Sarah's influence were now on my side. Recognizing that my vision for the company was what would propel it forward, I was leading them through the toughest time in the company's history, and I wasn't backing down. But Sarah, she was a different story. The exposure of her betrayal had ruined her. Once seen as the golden child, she was now just a cautionary tale. She had tried to take what wasn't hers, and now had nothing to show for it. All of her efforts to manipulate the inheritance, to push me out of my rightful place, had crumbled under the weight of the truth. Her reputation was destroyed. The trust she had once built was gone, and with it, her future in this family. She had thought she was clever, that she could win by taking everything from me. But I had turned the tables, and the world was watching as her downfall played out in front of everyone. I sat in the boardroom for the first time as the true leader, looking at the faces of the people who would help me take this company to new heights. They were no longer looking to Sarah for guidance. They were looking at me, and I knew I had earned that trust. I wasn't just the woman who had been betrayed. I was the woman who had risen from the ashes, smarter, stronger, and more determined than ever. I want this company to grow beyond what anyone thought possible, I said to the board. We're going to build on the foundation my parents laid. We'll adapt, we'll innovate, and we will thrive. But we will do it together. The faces around the table nodded in agreement. They saw it now. They saw the leadership in me that they had failed to see before. They saw the resilience. They saw the vision. And as I stood up from the table, I couldn't help but smile. It wasn't just about reclaiming the company anymore. It was about forging my own path, creating something new, something better. Outside, the sun was setting over the city, casting a warm glow over the skyline. It felt symbolic. This was the moment. This was my victory, my rise. The journey had been long, the betrayal deep and unexpected, but it had led me here, stronger, smarter, and more empowered than ever before. My journey wasn't over. There would be challenges ahead, but I was ready. And I would face them with the same resolve that had carried me this far. I had taken back my inheritance, my family's legacy, and now I was going to ensure that it grew into something that could never be taken from me again. I thought back to Sarah, once so sure of herself, so convinced that she was in control. She had lost, and I had won. I had learned one of life's toughest lessons. Betrayal can break you, but it can also make you stronger if you're willing to rise from it. Now I learned no firm is willing to risk employing her, and she had to settle for something below average. Greed has consequences too. And as I looked at the empire I was now building, I knew this. No one would ever take it from me again. No one would ever take me down again. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more.